Welcome to Shadowed Tales Archive. Tonight's story is titled, The Hollow Grove. Let the shadows speak. Part 1. Beneath the Bark. I never planned to go back to Briar Glen. Not after what happened with my sister. Not after what I saw in those woods. But some places don't care whether you're ready. Some places remember your name, even when you've tried to forget theirs. It started with a letter, handwritten, no return address, just my name in shaky ink and a wax seal pressed with a symbol I didn't recognize, something like a spiral made of roots. Inside, a note, "The grove is dying, and so are we. You must come back. You were chosen." That was all. No signature, no explanation, but something about it hit me like a cold nail through the chest. And worse, I knew exactly what grove they meant. Back when we were kids, my sister Harper and I used to explore the woods behind our grandfather's cabin. He called them the Old Hollow, though no one else did. He said the trees were older than sin, that they remembered things long after people forgot. He used to tell us not to step past the creek that cut through the forest. Said it was a boundary, not just of land, but of sense, of reason, of being. But we were kids. Of course we crossed it. The first time we found that part of the woods, it was like walking into a dream that didn't want you there. Everything looked normal, but off. The trees were twisted, not broken or dead, just wrong. Their bark peeled and long, ribbon-like strands, and the smell, it wasn't rot exactly. More like old breath, like something had been exhaling for centuries. There was a clearing at the center. And in that clearing stood a tree unlike any I've ever seen. It wasn't tall. It didn't stretch or twist. It just sat there squat, round and black, like it had been burned and left to congeal. Its roots spread wide and flat, crawling just beneath the dirt like veins. Every time I looked at it, I swore it pulsed. Harper hated it. She said it made her stomach churn, that she dreamed about it staring at her when she closed her eyes. And then, one summer, she stopped coming back to the cabin. A month later, she was gone. That was 13 years ago. Now here I was 31, divorced, burned out from a tech job I never loved, holding a letter that smelled faintly of moss and wax and memory. I told myself I just needed closure, that maybe someone from the town was playing some sick prank. Or maybe Harper had sent it. Somehow. But the truth? The truth is, I never stopped dreaming of that tree. The road to Briar Glen hadn't changed much. Same broken pavement, same skeletal power lines leaning like they'd given up decades ago. Most of the houses looked abandoned or close to it. A gas station with a sign half lit, open, though no one was inside. The town smelled like mildew and gasoline. I drove straight to the cabin. Grandpa had died when I was in college. No one had touched the place since. I still had the key on my old ring, the one I never threw away even after everything. I told myself it was nostalgia. It wasn't. The cabin looked smaller than I remembered. Time does that. The paint had peeled off the wood siding in jagged flakes, and something had nested in the gutters. Leaves, feathers, bones. The porch sagged like it had been holding its breath too long. But when I opened the door, it creaked just the same. Inside, the air was thick with dust and a hint of something sour. Not rot, more like wet soil left too long in a closed jar. I didn't bother unpacking. Just set my duffel on the floor, lit a candle, and walked to the back door. Behind the cabin, the trees waited. Crossing the creek again felt like pressing your hand into something warm and unwilling. The water was low, trickling with thick, amber-tinted current. It smelled metallic, like old blood. The woods beyond were too quiet. No birds, no wind, just the sound of my boots on damp earth. And then I found it. The clearing was still there, but the tree had changed. It had grown, not taller, wider. Its base now stretched nearly 15 feet across, its roots thicker than my legs, spreading in all directions like fingers. The bark was darker than I remembered, black with streaks of green and deep red, like bruised flesh. Something oozed from the cracks. Viscous, pale yellow. It steamed where it hit the soil. And carved into its trunk, beneath a heavy knot that looked too much like an eye, were new words. They hadn't been there before. They were in English this time. A vessel must decay, so the grove may bloom. You were chosen. Kneel. I didn't kneel. I backed away, heart pounding so hard it made my vision blur. I didn't run. Not yet. Some part of me was still tethered to that space, still caught in the web of memory and wonder and horror. But I saw something then, between the roots. A shape, small, familiar. A bracelet, plastic pink and blue, woven, with a single name stamped on the tag in blocky letters. Harper. It was half buried in the dirt, just like she had been. That's when I heard the whisper, right behind me. My name. Part 2. The Watchers Beneath. I spun around, expecting someone, anyone, behind me. But there was nothing. Just trees. Trees too still, too straight. They didn't move with the wind because there was no wind. Their leaves didn't rustle. Their trunks didn't creak. They stood like they were listening, like they were waiting. The voice had been soft, almost curious. My name, but not in anger, not even in a warning. More like an invitation. I wasn't ready to accept it. So I ran, back across the creek, through the brush, over the rotted fence post I had once dared Harper to climb when we were 9. The air grew colder as I neared the cabin, and I told myself it was the forest letting me go, letting me breathe. But when I looked back, I saw them. Figures. Thin, bark-colored, blending into the trunks. Watching me. Not following, but not gone either. Just watching. That night, I didn't sleep. I locked the doors, drew the curtains, lit every candle I could find in the old place. Most were long dead, but a few still had life in them. The soft orange glow made the shadows jitter on the walls, but it kept the dark from swallowing me whole. I sat on the floor, back against the wall, eyes trained on the window facing the woods. The bracelet sat in my lap, still damp, still smelling faintly of earth and something sweet like decaying fruit. I couldn't shake the thought. If this was Harper's, and it was, how the hell had it ended up there? Buried by roots, left like a calling card. Did she drop it? Was she trying to warn me? Or was she still out there? Sometime around 3 a.m., I heard a knock at the front door. 3 slow taps, then silence. I froze. No one was supposed to be here. No one knew I was here. I hadn't told anyone, not even my ex. I hadn't posted, hadn't texted. The cabin didn't have service. The knock came again. I stood slowly, heart punching against my ribs, and crept to the door. The porch light had died long ago, so I could only see a vague silhouette through the old peephole. Someone was there, tall, hooded, standing still. Who is it? I called, trying to sound firm. It came out dry and brittle. A pause, then a voice, raspy, female, like dry leaves rubbing together. You went to the grove, didn't you? I didn't respond. Open the door, Evan, before the roots do. Her name was Elsie Calder. She lived 2 miles east of the cabin, in a rust-colored trailer surrounded by wind chimes and bones. She smelled like dirt and mint and some kind of herbal oil. Said she used to be a botanist. Said she used to have a daughter. Lila, she said, pouring herself tea from a cracked thermos as she sat at my kitchen table like we were old friends. 16. She was the last one before the silence started. I didn't know what that meant. Elsie sipped her tea and met my eyes. Hers were pale green, almost milky. You found the black tree, didn't you? I nodded. You smell like it. She said it without malice. Like it was just a fact. Like telling someone they had rain in their hair. I need to know what's happening, I said. Why that thing? Why it's calling to me? Elsie didn't answer at first. She set her tea down and unbuttoned her sleeve. Her forearm was covered in something I thought was a tattoo at first, but it moved, faintly, lines just under the skin, too symmetrical to be veins, too alive. "The grove marks you," she said. "It remembers every footstep, every breath, every name. It has always needed a king." I swallowed hard. "A king," she nodded slowly. "A vessel, a shape, something to hold it. It can't move without one. But once it has you, it spreads." I wanted to scream, to leave, to burn the forest and salt the soil. But somewhere deep beneath the fear was something worse, something closer to hunger. A memory of the tree pulsing, the smell, the feel of the dirt giving beneath my feet like skin. I looked down at my own hands and noticed something I hadn't before. My fingertips were darker than they should have been, faintly green, like mold beneath the nails. "Can I stop it?" I asked. "Can I undo this?" Elsie didn't answer. She just stared at me, through me, and then she said something I still can't forget. "The grove doesn't end. It just trades names." That night, I had the first dream. I was standing in the clearing, but it wasn't night or day. Just a dull gray light hanging over everything like fog. The black tree was larger now, impossibly large. It rose into the sky like a mountain made of rot and memory. At its base, dozens of figures knelt in a circle. Their skin peeled, their eyes wept sap, their mouths moved in silence. One of them turned to me. It was Harper, but not the way I remembered her. Her face was wrong, too long. Her skin patchy and bark-colored. Her teeth gone, but it was her. She reached toward me and whispered one word. "Breathe." I woke up choking, something thick in my throat. I stumbled to the sink, coughing so hard I thought my ribs might break. I spat out a clot, dark and wet. Not blood, not exactly. It moved, a maggot, fat and white, writhing in the sink before sliding down the drain. Part 3. The Seed Within. The next morning, Elsie was gone. No note, no sound of her truck, just her tea mug, cold and half full, sitting on the table like she'd vanished mid-sentence. The only sign she'd ever been, there was a single item she'd left behind. A book, leather-bound, thick, and old enough to smell like mildew and dirt. The title had been worn away, but carved inside the first page, in sharp, slanted handwriting, were 5 words. "Offerings for the Hollow Grove." I flipped through it with shaking hands. Inside were drawings, old, hand-inked etchings of trees that looked disturbingly familiar. One especially caught my eye, the black tree, rendered in painful detail. Beneath it, crude figures knelt. Lines of roots pierced their backs like thorns. The ground around them bubbled with shapes I couldn't name. Each chapter had a name. The Watchers, the tongue beneath the bark, Inheritance. That last one had a diagram. Not a ritual, not quite. A process. I tried to leave town that day. I packed my duffel bag, grabbed my keys, didn't even turn off the lights. Just walked straight to the car and drove like the forest was chasing me. But the road curved wrong. It took me 20 minutes to notice. Every tree looked the same. The signs were gone. The road got thinner, then cracked, then stopped. I stepped out of the car. The air was too still again. And in the center of the gravel path, a branch, black, wet, pulsing faintly. As I stared at it, I saw something rise from beneath the surface of the bark. An eye. It blinked. I didn't drive back. I didn't turn around. I just walked. That night, I showered for the first time in days. The water ran brown over my skin. I thought it was dirt, mud from the forest. But then I looked closer. It wasn't mud. It was sap. Thick, amber-colored, sweet-smelling. It oozed from the pores in my chest and spine, gathering at the drain like honey from rotted bark. My fingernails had turned darker. One of them fell off in the steam. I didn't scream. Somehow I wasn't surprised. It was like my body had known before my brain did. I opened the book again, fingers shaking. The chapter on inheritance talked about the line. Each generation, one is chosen. Not born, not blessed, found. The grove selects those who carry the memory of the soil in their blood. It is not life it seeks, but echo. And beneath that, a passage I couldn't look away from. The first king was a girl, Harper. I turned the page and found a crude map, scratched out in charcoal. It showed the clearing, yes, but also paths deeper, roots extending, symbols scattered like scars across the land. One of the marks looked just like the bracelet I'd found. Another looked like an eye. The third looked like a mouth. That night, I heard Harper's voice again. Not in a dream, not in my head. Outside, whispering through the trees. It's almost ready, Evan. You just need to let it bloom. I looked out the window and saw her standing at the edge of the forest. Except it wasn't her. Not anymore. Her face was warped. Her limbs too long, like they'd stretched past what skin could hold. Her mouth opened too wide, and where her eyes should have been, sap bled slow and steady like tears. But the voice was hers. It's not death. It's a garden. I didn't sleep. I waited for sunrise, but it never came. The clock read 6:13 a.m., then 7:40, then 8:22. Still, outside was dark. The forest had closed its canopy. The grove was holding the sun. And then, around 9:03, the knocking returned. Not at the door, at the walls. Tiny, rhythmic taps, like knuckles drumming on wood from inside the frame. I backed away. The tapping spread to the floors, the cabinets, even a mirror in the bathroom where I caught a glimpse of my own face, paler, turning green, veins branching beneath my skin like ivy. And then, from beneath the floorboards, a single voice hissed up. "Come down, King." I tore the rug away, revealing the hatch to the basement. It had always been there. Grandpa said it was just storage, tools, paint, old junk. I never looked. Now I had no choice. The wood creaked beneath my feet as I pulled the door open. A rush of warm, wet air spilled out, smelling like mushrooms and moss and something faintly metallic. I climbed down slowly. The steps dripped with condensation, or sweat. I couldn't tell. At the bottom was a dirt floor, and the remains of something long buried. Bones. Dozens. Human, mostly. Wrapped in vines. One skull still had hair attached, blonde matted. Next to it, half buried in soil, was a photograph sealed in plastic. I wiped away the grime. It was Harper, 12 years old, smiling, standing in the clearing. Behind her, just barely visible in the shadow of the trees. Something watching. Something tall. I backed away and hit something. Not a wall. Not stone. Something warm. I turned, and it spoke. "You're almost ready. Let the seed take root." Part 4, Blooming Time. I ran. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to move. That if I stayed one more second in that basement, that dirt and blood crypt, the grove would seal itself around me. The thing that spoke, whatever it was, didn't follow. It didn't have to. The seed had already been planted. I felt it in my chest. Not metaphorically. Literally. There was a weight there now. Something pulsing beneath my sternum. I could feel it when I breathed, like a second heartbeat. Slower and deeper. Rooted. The grove wasn't just outside anymore. It was inside me. I stumbled out of the cabin into a sky painted gray-green. No sun, no wind, just the soft groaning of the trees, so low and steady it sounded like breathing. My vision swam. My hand was shaking. My left arm ached, and when I rolled up the sleeve, I saw that my veins were no longer blue. They were black. Lines of bark like ridges climbed up my forearm like tattoos I didn't remember getting. My skin flaked. My fingernails itched. I felt like I was being grown from the inside out. I needed answers. Real ones. I needed Elsie. Her trailer was still there, still surrounded by wind chimes and bones. But something had changed. The door was open. Inside, the walls were covered in drawings, hundreds of them. ink and charcoal and something that looked like dried sap. The black tree appeared in almost everyone, sometimes alone, sometimes surrounded by people kneeling, sometimes bleeding, sometimes crowned. On the kitchen table was a journal, and beside it, a pair of garden shears soaked in what I thought was blood. But it wasn't blood. It was amber. The last journal entry read, "I tried to stop it. I burned the altar. I tore out the roots. But they always grow back. It doesn't need consent. Only shape." Lila didn't scream. Not once. That's how I knew it was too late. Below that, scratched so hard the page tore. "Evan is next." He was always next. I heard something outside. A rustling. Slow. Intentional. I opened the back door and nearly dropped to my knees. Harper was there. No, what was left of Harper. She stood beneath the hanging chimes, her skin the color of dried moss, bark splitting along her arms like scales. Her mouth was wider now. The corners of her lips split and grown outward. Her eyes oozed golden sap that trailed down her jaw like tears. But still, it was her. I knew it. "Evan," she said, voice low and shaking. "I don't have much time." Not as me. I froze. "I tried to run," she said. "I thought I could bury it. Thought maybe if I let it grow in me, it wouldn't need anyone else. I thought I could contain it." Her hand twitched. I was wrong. I wanted to cry, to scream, to hug her and never let go. But all I could do was whisper, "What is it?" Harper didn't blink. I wasn't sure she could. "The grove is old," she said. "Older than people. Older than language. It's not just alive. It's hungry." She looked up at the trees, swaying slowly behind her. "It needs someone to speak for it, to spread it, to be its mouth." "The king," I muttered. She nodded. "I held it back for 13 years. But it doesn't die. It waits." I looked at her, really looked and saw her shaking, struggling. Something beneath her skin moved. "What's happening now?" I asked. Harper reached in her chest pocket and pulled out a folded, yellowed page. "A ritual. The blooming," she said. "It's how the grove takes root in the world. Through the king. Through you." The page showed the black tree in the center of a ring of 7 figures, each one bleeding into the roots. At the center, a human form split open like a flower, arms wide, head tilted back. "Tomorrow," Harper whispered, "at sundown, the ritual begins. Once it does, there's no turning back." I stared at the page. There has to be a way to stop it. There is. Harper looked at me with eyes full of something I hadn't seen in years. Hope. Fire. Not just a spark. Not just matches. She pointed toward the sketch. "Purging. The grove hates heat. That's why the sun never breaks the canopy. You have to burn it all." I felt my stomach twist. "Ow!" She gave a weak smile. "You'll know." But then her body tensed. Her head jerked left. "No," she gasped. "Not yet." And then she screamed. A gurgling, wet scream that ripped through her throat like it didn't belong to her anymore. Her arms snapped backward, joints cracking. Her skin began to split, leaking sap and spores. I reached out. "Harper," but she staggered away from me, voice choked with something that wasn't English. Her mouth opened wide, and from her throat came roots. Thin, black tendrils unfurling like tongues, reaching into the sky, lashing at the chimes. Her body collapsed. The roots slithered back into the earth, and she was gone. I stood there for what felt like hours. The wind chimes didn't move, not even once. That night, the dreams returned. But this time, I wasn't in the clearing. I was under it, buried. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. I was soil. I was mulch. And above me, the roots twisted through the bones of those who came before. My lungs were filled with moss. My heartbeat slowed, and in the darkness, a whisper, "Bloom, little king." I woke up with sap on my pillow. It had dripped from my ears. Part 5. The root line. I didn't go back to the cabin. Not after what happened to Harper. I slept in the back seat of the car, engine off, surrounded by fog so thick it pressed against the windows like hands. I didn't dream, but I didn't rest either. The Grove wouldn't let me. When I opened my eyes the next morning, there were spores on the windshield. Not dew, not dirt, spores. Tiny black specks in looping spiral patterns. It had marked me, claimed me, and it wanted me back. I still had the page Harper gave me, the one about the blooming. I laid it out across the hood of the car, weighted by stones, and stared at the crude drawings. The tree, the ring of kneeling figures, the vessel split open like a flower. But what caught my eye now was something I hadn't noticed before. A second ring beneath the first. Faint, almost erased. 7 roots, each touching a hollow beneath the soil. The root line. I follow the map. It took hours. I crossed dried riverbeds and moss-choked paths, my body aching, skin tight and itchy. My nails had all blackened. My gums bled. At one point, I coughed something up, wet, yellow squirming. It twitched on the leaves before I crushed it beneath my boot. Whatever was growing inside me, I didn't have much time left, but I had enough. I found the first hollow near dusk. It looked like nothing, a dip in the earth between 2 broken trees. But as I stepped closer, the ground trembled beneath my boots. Roots, pulsing just below the surface, like veins. When I knelt down and touched them, I heard voices, thousands, layered over each other, murmuring, weeping, laughing. We were here. We fed the seed. Now we bloom again. I staggered back, breathing hard. This wasn't just memory. It was a network, a living web of all who came before. Those who had been consumed, absorbed, used. The Grove didn't kill. It harvested. I kept moving, found another hollow, then another. Each one the same. A dip in the earth, soft soil, roots just beneath the surface. And each time I touched them, more the voices came. One I recognized. Evan. Harper. But it wasn't her voice exactly. Not anymore. It was like the echo of her grief carved into bark. I could hear her memories, me and her on the tire swing, her hiding in the crawl space during storms, her laughter echoing through the woods when we first found the Grove. The Grove had taken everything that made her, and now it was feeding it to me. I dropped to my knees and screamed. That night, I saw the root line in its full form. A vision, or maybe a memory. I stood beneath the black tree, and the soil split open beneath me. The roots twisted, massive and hungry, crawling like serpents through bone and rock. At their center was a heart, not metaphorical, a literal heart, flesh, beating, the size of a horse, covered in fungus and pulsing with golden fluid. Dozens of faces pressed out from its skin, some crying, some silent, some grinning like masks carved into rotten wood. The heart opened and whispered, "All things must rot, Evan. That is how the forest feeds." I woke up bleeding. From my eyes, my nose, my chest. My skin was cracking in patterns, leaf vein lines spreading down my arms across my ribs. My stomach bulged unnaturally. Something moved inside. I stumbled through the woods, barely conscious, until I reached a wide clearing, one I hadn't seen before. In the center was a stone circle, carved with symbols, 7 pillars around a dead fire pit. At the center, a mound of bones, carefully stacked and now partially overtaken by moss and root. The ritual site. This was where it would happen. The blooming. I collapsed beside the pit and screamed at the sky. This is not my role. I didn't ask for this. The trees didn't answer, but the soil did. A hand pushed up from the earth. Not alive, not fully. Half flesh, half root. Fingers of bone wrapped in vines. The hand reached toward me and curled, as if beckoning. And then, from behind, I heard footsteps. Soft, measured. I turned. Elsie. She looked worse than before. sunken cheeks, skin sagging, but her eyes still burned with that herbal green fire. "You found it," she said. I nodded. Couldn't speak. She crouched beside me, looking at my arms, my face. "You're nearly there," she said. "But there's one more choice." I looked at her. Choice. She handed me a flask. Glass. Filled with thick black fluid that shimmered with gold flecks. "Fire," she said. "But not flame. Not gasoline. Essence. Distilled from the sap of the first tree. It burns the grove from the inside out." She held up a second vial. Amber-colored. "This one finishes the transformation." I stared at both. Two paths. Burn it all. Will it take me? Become a new king. The mouth of the grove. Elsie looked at me. "I've seen many try both," she whispered. "One lives. One spreads. Neither comes back." Part 6. The first tree burns. I held both vials in my hands. One black as pitch, swirling like ink stirred by wind. One amber, thick and golden, catching the light like sap from a wounded god. Life or fire. One path forward meant surrendering, giving up who I was, who I had been, and becoming something else entirely. Not dead, not alive, just absorbed. The other? Destruction. No promises. No coming back. Only ashes. What would she have chosen? I asked. Elsie didn't speak right away. Then, with a cracked voice, she whispered she did choose. She pointed to the pile of bones beside the ritual pit. "That's where I found her. Harper burned the grove once, with the same vial you're holding. But it was only a piece of it. One vein." I swallowed, throat thick with horror. "She knew it would come back," I muttered. Elsie nodded. "The grove doesn't die. It hides. Then it calls." The forest groaned around us, low and deep, a sound like a throat clearing across 1,000 trunks. The air shifted, and then we saw them. Figures, dozens, stepping from between the trees. Their shapes human, but wrong. Elongated, bark for skin, eyes empty and wet with gold. Some crawled on all fours. Some limped. Some dragged themselves across the roots with arms too long and legs too thin. The former kings. The used. The ones who came before me. They didn't speak. They just circled the pit, kneeling one by one, heads bowed. The blooming had begun. Elsie grabbed my wrist. "You still have a choice, Evan, but not for long." I looked down at the vials. My hand was trembling. From the clearing, a sound rose, a chant, but not in any language I knew. It was like the cracking of trees, the slither of vines, the wet popping of spores releasing into the air. I saw movement from the ground, roots, coiling like fingers through the earth, reaching up, surrounding the pit. And then, her. Harper stepped into the ring, but not fully Harper. Her limbs split with green. Her voice echoed with a dozen others. Her chest ballooned open, petals of bone unfurling around a heart beating with golden light. She looked at me and smiled. "You're late," she said. I couldn't speak. Her voice was both familiar and terrible, like someone humming your favorite lullaby through a mouth full of teeth. "The grove is ready, Evan. It's hungry. It's waiting." I stepped forward. My knees shook. Every part of me screamed to run, but something else pulled me in. The weight in my chest pulsed faster, stronger. I could feel tendrils winding through my ribcage now, curling around my lungs. I dropped my knees. "You don't have to fight it," Harper said. She knelt beside me, touching my face with a hand both warm and sticky. "It doesn't mean you vanish. You just change." She leaned in, forehead to mine. "And you've always hated endings, haven't you?" I could see something behind her eyes. Not rage, not corruption, peace. It terrified me more than anything. The chanting grew louder. The roots reached up, wrapping my arms, legs, anchoring me to the earth. They didn't hurt. They welcomed. The black vial slipped from my hand. I looked down and saw my reflection in the amber vial's surface. Not my face. The tree. "Choose," Harper whispered. And I did. I grabbed the black vial and smashed it against the ground. The sap ignited instantly, fire blooming like blood and water, racing across the roots with a shriek like tortured wind. It caught on the bones, the altar, the pillars. The entire ring burst into flame. Harper screamed, not in pain but in shock, as if the grove had never imagined refusal. The kneeling figures wailed. Their bodies cracked, splintered, melted. Gold sap boiled from their mouths. Bark split open. One by one they dropped. The grove trembled. The trees around us swayed violently, their branches flailing like limbs. "You were chosen," the forest howled. "You were promised. You were our root." I stumbled to my feet, chest heaving. The fire roared. The ground split open. A crack opened beneath the pit, exposing the heart from my vision. Massive, glistening, throbbing. It pulsed once, twice, then caught fire and screamed. Not a sound of pain, a death knell, a forest-wide shriek that shook the world to its bones. The sky cracked, the light bled, and then silence. I woke up in ashes, black snow falling all around me. The air choked with soot and sap smoke. No roots, no voices, just a crater where the altar had been. The forest was gone, reduced to stumps and scorched bones. Elsie's body lay nearby, curled around something, Harper's bracelet. I stood, barely. My chest ached, but the pulsing was gone. The heartbeat that wasn't mine had gone silent. I was alone, or so I thought, because as I turned to leave, I saw something buried beneath the ash. A seed, black and gold, still warm, still twitching, still alive. Part 7. Ash doesn't forget. It took me 2 days to walk back to the edge of town. The forest didn't fight me this time. No twisting roads, no repeating paths, just a long stretch of charred soil and silence. Every few miles, I passed what remained of trees, stumps curled inward like hands pulled into themselves before death. The fire had done its job, but it hadn't felt like victory. It felt like a funeral. My body hadn't fully healed. The black veins were fading, but still visible. The cracking in my skin had slowed, but there were moments, short, flickering moments, when I felt something move inside me, like a breath that wasn't mine. I told myself it was trauma, that it was over, but I never fully believed it. When I finally reached the outskirts of Briar Glen, it was nearly dusk. The town was off, not destroyed, not burned, but wrong. People walked slowly, eyes slightly too wide, movements delayed, like puppets lagging behind their strings. At the diner, no one spoke, not even the cook. They just chewed, slowly, like they'd forgotten how to swallow. When I passed the hardware store, a man was sweeping nothing, just dragging the broom over the same spot, over and over and over. I stopped at the gas station to get water. The cashier stared at me for 10 full seconds before asking, "Did you bring it back?" I froze. "What?" He blinked slowly, smiled. "Whatever you left in the woods. It's still in your eyes." That night, I tried to sleep at the old motel. Room 6, same one I used to crash in during college breaks. The wallpaper was the same, faded floral print that curled at the edges like old bark. I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. Every creak of the pipes sounded like breathing. Every whisper of wind sounded like roots curling through drywall. At 2:33 a.m., I looked in the mirror and saw bark forming around the whites of my eyes. Only for a second, then it was gone. The next morning, I visited the cemetery. Harper's headstone was there, weathered, moss-covered, but still standing. Her name was etched in crooked serif letters, just beneath the words. Gone from the grove, but not the earth. I knelt in front of it and laid the bracelet down. "I'm sorry," I whispered. The wind blew gently. I could almost hear her voice in it. It's not your fault. But it was. I had waited too long. Fought too late. The grove had touched too many lives. Hers, Elsie's, maybe even the entire town. And now I had a choice to make. I could vanish. Leave Briar Glen behind. Change my name. Start over in a city where trees were decorative and soil came in bags. Or I could stay. Watch. Wait. Because I knew what that seed had meant. The one I found in the ashes. The grove doesn't die. It just goes quiet. It waits. That night, I dug a hole behind the cabin. Deep, narrow, lined with salt, and I buried the seed, wrapped in wax cloth, sealed with blood, not to destroy it, not yet, but to keep it still, to hold it in place. Because one day, someone else might come here, might wander past the creek, might find the clearing again. And when they do, they'll need a warning. They'll need to know. So I sat down, and I wrote everything. This story, this record, every crack in the bark, every whisper from the trees, every heartbeat that wasn't mine. I wrote it so someone else could know what to fear, what to fight, what to burn. But as I finish these words, I hear it again. Soft, deep, from somewhere below. The soil, the whisper. Evan, come water us. Part 8. The seed remembers. I found mold on my toothbrush this morning. Not fuzzy, not green, just black. Thin streaks curled along the bristles like veins. I hadn't used it in 3 days. Hadn't touched it, but it pulsed when I held it. Faintly, like a heartbeat. I tossed it into the sink and stared at it for a long time. Sometimes I wonder if I ever really left the grove, or if this, everything since the fire, has just been the next stage of blooming. It's hard to explain what changes after you've been chosen. Not just your body, not even your mind. Something deeper. Your place. You no longer walk through the world like it's yours. You pass through it like roots moving through grave soil, soft, slow, without permission. I feel people look at me. They don't know what's wrong, just that something is. Like I bring the smell of wet earth with me. Like my shadow leans the wrong way. Like if they listen closely, they might hear leaves. I'm not writing this for sympathy, and I'm not writing it to be believed. I'm writing it because someday, someone else will find the seed. Or maybe they already have. Maybe you have. If you've dreamed of trees with teeth, or roots that whisper your name, or watched bark spread down your arms after a walk in the woods, you've already been marked. You just don't know it yet. Let me tell you a few final truths. The grove speaks in memory. It uses what you love to dig in. It never rushes, only waits. It never forces, only asks. And once you hear your name whispered from the soil, it's already too late. I dug up the seed yesterday, just to check, just to be sure. It was gone. The cloth was shredded. The salt burned away. In its place was a root. Thin, fresh, moving. I followed it. It led into the woods. Not the hollow, not the old boundary, but deeper, beneath the hills, to a new place, a new tree, small, young, still wet with birth. And at its base, another message carved in bark. The king burns. The king grows. The king is many, and the king remembers. So I'll say this once, and only once. If you see a tree with black bark, if you smell something sweet and rotten, if you feel the ground throb beneath your feet, don't follow it. Don't read the poem. Don't step past the creek. Don't listen, because once it knows your name, it won't forget. I pack my things. The cabin is no longer safe. Nothing is, but maybe distance buys time. Maybe I can stay ahead of it. Maybe I stop writing here. But if someone finds this notebook, if you're holding it now, covered in dust, reading these words in the glow of a screen or candle or match, you're already standing in the roots. And the grove? It's listening.
And that was tonight's tale from the Shadowed Tales archive. If it left a mark on your mind, if the silence feels heavier now, then the story did what it was meant to do. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the darkness. New stories are always on their way. Until then, keep the lights low and the doors locked.